BC Zay Flowers, this is one that's really cool for me because back before I joined Sumer, I was doing a lot of college betting. I was doing a lot of college DFS. And this was somebody who I always had in my lineups because he was always so slippery. But he's a little guy, 5'9", 182, 4.42 in the 40, which is good. It's not like a burner type when you're that size. But decent explosiveness. The thing that I find really funny about him is his yards after the catch were both lower than Smith-Njigba and Johnston, even as a smaller guy, but his average at the target is over 15 yards, which is 43rd in college football. They legitimately at Boston College, without great quarterbacks, were trying to go downfield to him. And so, I don't know. When I watched him, I just wrote down he was open a lot. That is something that matters in the NFL, especially when you don't have the size.
It is. And this is a start to the smaller receivers that are, they're really good. There's some really good receivers here. I think he is he's a 7 athlete in my mind, so he's a very good receiver. A little scaled down because he is a smaller guy, right?
Yeah.
If this guy were to be 4 or 5 inches taller and he's moving around 4 inches taller, you'd be thinking, wow, this guy has a rare type of movement and athleticism. Back to body control. He is a really, really good route runner, and he separates very well, right?
Yeah.
The separation in the end is where he is. Let's focus on separation versus pure route running. The stop-start ability that we all know is important before and after is interesting to see. But again, I've had small receivers and I've had big receivers on teams. Some of the smaller receivers you haven't had to snap off the board in the first round. You can do it in the second and third round. And look, Harry Douglas, guys like that we had. I'm not saying Harry was as talented as Zay, but to your point, 4.42 is not 4.32, right?
Yeah. And 4.42 when you're that small is not. I mean, you have to show, in my opinion, that you can make a contested catch. You have to show that you can bounce off a tackle. The other part, and maybe this is a little bit, like I said, I think he's a really good football player. I think he's legitimate. I would say, back half of the first, probably early second is where you're going to find the most value on him because of the limitations there and the fact that if you take a wide receiver, so you think about like Sky Moore, George Pickens, Christian Watson, where the Packers erred was they took Christian Watson at the beginning of the second round and needing him to be a starter right away. Where the Chiefs were good in taking Sky Moore was wanting him to develop 1 year. Because when you're taken in round 2 and you sit for a year, that's perfectly acceptable in my opinion. If you're taken in round 2 and you expect the guy to play right away, that's a little bit of a chore. And so when I look at him, I think where are expectations in year 1? Expectations are to play a role on a good football team, right? And that's going to put you in that kind of 30, 25 to 40 range, probably maybe a trade up from a good team. Then it's really going to take you, in a top 15 sort of place where you got to be, like I said, back in the day, you had to be everything at wide receiver. You had to be jams from the inside and the outside. You had to play, you had to play that X position or the Z position, which just doesn't require a lot of a receiver. And if you're taking a little bit later in the draft and you fail, let's say on the outside, and they salvage you on the inside, that's not a failed draft pick in my opinion. If you're taking 10th and you have the result in that, that's a failed draft pick. And so I think that that's more where the expectations are for me with him. I do get a little worried about things like special teams because wide receivers nowadays, you have to play special teams when you're that small. It's hard to run down on kicks. It's hard to be a blocker on returns and stuff like that. So there is a little bit of a limitation. Even for him to be does he dress on game day if he's not a starting receiver type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, and this is where we go. Remember, usually when you're writing up reports on the personnel side, you're writing up, is he an outside guy, is he an inside guy? And we do often, if it's outside, however you prioritize, if he's more outside, then it's O/I, of course, in the description of why. Of course, this guy's ability to run routes from the inside and do whatever, and he's not a big guy to be on the outside, right? I get that. In the end, is this guy more than a number 2 in the league? And most teams would say he's a deuce, right?
Yeah.
He's a deuce. Now, where does that 2 go? Well, you can pick a 2, like you said, the back end of the first round. There's going to be a lot of people out there if they had the druthers. They'd love to pop him in the top 10 in the second. But he doesn't. I don't believe he gets there. I believe he gets out of the back end.